Hey there, everybody. Good morning. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to day 6, episode 6 of the 30 most important albums in the history of hard rock and heavy metal. All right, we're kind of doing these chronologically. I've got my list of the albums that I feel are the most important in this kind of formation of what we know as heavy music, hard rock, and metal. All right, we got some stuff from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. We're going to kind of go through a lot of this. 30 days, 30 albums, right? November. So today we've arrived, the next couple actually happened to be from 1969. This particular one was released January 12th, 1969. Atlantic Records, produced by the guitar player of the band and one of the chief songwriters, Mr. Jimmy Page. Of course, the first Led Zeppelin album. Can't have this conversation without this album coming up, right? I mean, one of the most important albums in the history of hard rock and metal. And, no, it's not a metal album by any means, what we would later know as heavy metal, but this album was so important in the formation of heavy rock, hard rock, and, the big guitar riffing, taking those blues classics, blues-based songs, and turning them into something else. Jimmy Page, a master of the guitar, whether it be, heavy electric riffs, bluesy things, or, light, folky acoustic passages. I mean, a little bit of everything here. Right, a little bit of everything here. Some ballsy, just ballsy things going on. That kind of, again, we talked about the Jeff Beck group, the Truth album the other day, and I think, Page and Beck knew each other obviously very, very well. Both came from the Yardbirds. I think they both had a similar idea. But I think that Zeppelin kind of took, because, the Beck album came out first, I think Zeppelin kind of took that formula, that the heavy blues rock, and they kind of went a little further. Because I think, while most of the Beck album is more kind of bluesy sort of things, I mean, here, you got little bits of psychedelia, a little bit of folk, right? Little bits of pop and lots of sledgehammer heavy rock, as well as the blues, right? John Paul Jones on bass and keyboards, Robert Plant on vocals, and of course, Mr. John Bonham on drums, along with Jimmy Page on everything else. Classic stuff. Classic stuff. Whether you like the fourth album or the second album or Physical Graffiti or House of the Holy, whether you like the third album, whether you like any of those albums more, this is not about what is the best Led Zeppelin album. This is about which is the album that's the most influential to what we're talking about this month. So, good times, bad times. Definitely sounds like it came from 1969, right? But it's different. It's energetic and daring and almost dangerous, right? Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Okay, very cool, hypnotic song. Baby, 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 I'm gonna leave you. The wonderful acoustic work in that, right? It's kind of different, right? You Shook Me. Absolutely an old blues classic, right? Let's grab Willie Dixon and let's bring him into the late 60s. Some of those sounds coming from Mr. Page on that. Dynamite, Bonzo, just thundering away. Then you got, Dazed and Confused. Like, what? In 1969, we'd already heard Cream and we'd already heard Hendrix, but Dazed and Confused is something totally different. How heavy is that for the time, right? Menacing, dark. And Dazed and Confused, of course, live would open up the doors to all sorts of improvisation and just, crazy, batshit crazy stuff that Mr. Page was going to start doing. Soloing and the bow and, awesome stuff. Your Time Is Gonna Come. Black Mountainside. Communication Breakdown. I mean, right there, if that isn't kind of proto-metal, proto-speed metal in its early infant stages, I don't know what is. I Can't Quit You, Baby. more Willie Dixon, and then of course the epic How Many More Times, finishing it all off, one of the great originals. Not a lot of original stuff. I mean, there's half the album is quote unquote original material, the other half are covers. There's Zeppelin borrowed heavily from the bands and artists that came before them, so there's ideas taken from all over the place. But there's a young band; they're doing what they could to create an album, and it might not be the most original album ever released, but what they did with what they had certainly was. How Many More Times is just epic and ballsy and psychedelic and heavy and bluesy and everything under the sun, right? Great stuff. So, you have to talk about this album in this month, in this equation. Zeppelin is part of what helped make heavy music heavy. Led Zeppelin would do a lot of light and shade all throughout their career, which, in the grand scheme of things, not a very long career. By the time the 70s were up, Zeppelin basically no more, right? John Bonham dies, and the band that seemed like they hopefully were poised to enter the 80s, not quite. But what a legacy they left behind from, this debut all the way through to Into the Outdoor and Coda, if you want to include that as well. But yeah, this album, and the same year was released the second album. I almost did a 2-for-1. I don't want to repeat bands during this series, but I almost gave you 2-for-1 because, man, they came out so shortly after each other, and they kind of go hand in hand. But, let's give credit where credit is due, where it all started. So this, out of a lot of the albums that we're going to talk about, like in the early part of this series, this is definitely got to be a top 3. When it comes to those breakthrough albums that, if it wasn't for this and a couple other albums, would we have ever gotten a lot that came after it? Just bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and Metallica, do they do a lot of the things they do later on without this? Without, choices that are coming up over the next couple of days, without giving everything away, because you obviously, the big ones, you really know what they're going to be. But I don't know, right? Maybe not. So the heavy rock universe owes a great debt to this album and this band. So that is your pick for today, Led Zeppelin 1 from January 12th, 1969. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Stay tuned for episode number 7 coming up tomorrow, and each and every day throughout this month of November as we look at the 30 most important albums in the history of hard rock and heavy metal. And again, this is the most important that I feel, right? There's no document out there that says these are the definitive picks, right? And everybody's got their opinion on what are the most important albums, but these are the ones that I feel are the most important. They have something that really helps shape hard rock and metal going forward. And maybe down the road a ways did something completely different that threw a whole curveball into things that helped become influential at a much later date. But, we're going to spend a lot of time on the formation of hard rock and metal. So, like I said, the late 60s and the early mid part of the 70s, a lot of stuff happening that really paved the way for everybody else going forward. So thanks for watching. I am Pete Pardo. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks for watching. See you all real soon. Hope you're having a great weekend. I am Pete Pardo. Take care. Bye-bye.